To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve is in Treaty Number 2 and Number 4 territories of the Anishinaabe people, and say that we respect and share their all-important teachings that water is a sacred gift, essential for all life. Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve has been around since 1986, bringing people together to share their knowledge for the well-being of our communities. In this respect, we are pleased to have the participants in our Manitoba Healthy Prairie Lakes Network share their stories as we continue our series on lake protection success stories. Our workshops tonight will focus on stories of protecting our prairie lakes from aquatic invasive species, also called AIS, and we're particularly concerned about the zebra mussels. We are pleased to have DarylKines make two presentations on this topic tonight. His first presentation is entitled Building AIS Awareness, and second, the story of Sandy Lake's AIS protection measures. Daryl lives on the shores of Sandy Lake with his wife Julie and has been an intrepid force in working to protect Sandy Lake's waters, and has been frontline and center in the Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve's efforts to help protect our many other prairie lakes. I must say that many of the successes in Daryl's presentations tonight can largely be attributed to him and his dedication to the well-being of our lakes and the communities they support. I would like to now invite Daryl to start his presentations. Daryl?
Thank you, Jim. I certainly am not alone in the efforts that we have here at Sandy Lake, and Jim and I have done a lot of work in creating documents. He is the wordsmith. As Jim said, this particular presentation is essentially about how Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve has started building AIS awareness. Okay, this is an overview of the things that are needed. There are 4 topics that can help reduce the likelihood of your waters being invaded by zebra mussels. In other words, aquatic invasive species. Zebra mussels just happens to be the one that is the most threatening for us at this point, but the measures that we're going to talk about apply to the others as well. The first thing we need to do is we need to build public awareness. It's vital. Without public awareness, it's almost impossible to do other protective measures. This presentation covers the awareness part. The other 3 topics will be covered in future presentations. You must know that we have aquatic invasive species in Manitoba, and they pose a very real and serious threat to our waters. You may have property at a lake. You likely buy your groceries from a store at the lake. Your property values and the businesses that depend on your shopping there are at risk if your waters become invaded. Zebra mussels are present in the Red River, Lake Winnipeg, and are now making their way downstream on the Nelson River to Hudson Bay. Before we get into how Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve conducted its public awareness campaign, I think it's appropriate to review the basics. This short video tells the story of Victoria Beach, and this video was aired in April on the 24th in 2018.
A smelly, unpleasant eyesore has washed up in cottage country north of Winnipeg. Mounds of zebra mussels are scattered across the shoreline at Victoria Beach. CTV's Jeff Keel now on what's causing the invasive species to pile up.
Heather Willoughby is not digging through a sand pile. It's a mound full of zebra mussels.
Well, I'm not enjoying the smell that I'm smelling.
The Victoria Beach resident says she noticed some on the shore last fall, but as the snow melted this spring, piles of the invasive species were left behind. She worries they're multiplying at an alarming rate.
It's rather upsetting because we've never seen this before.
But the large hills of zebra mussels littering the beach doesn't necessarily mean there's been a huge explosion of them.
Zebra mussels are under the water, and people generally don't see them unless you're going scuba diving, of course.
The province says with the shoreline out because of ice, zebra mussels are now visible. And as for the piles, Provincial Aquatic Invasive Species Specialist Candice Parks says, blame Mother Nature.
It's just that when you do have a wind or wave event, they can be dislodged and then put onto the shore or onto the beach, and that's what people are now seeing.
Zebra mussels can attach themselves to objects. As a result, boat motors can be compromised and they can clog water intake structures and irrigation systems. All of this can have an economic impact on the lake. If this scene repeats itself every spring, Heather Willoughby worries about the future of this sandy paradise she's enjoyed for more than 40 years.
This beach is great for swimming, and we have grandchildren obviously that come, and we love to swim, and so it hurts when you walk on them.
The province says it will continue with its annual prevention measures, including the Watercraft inspection program set to begin next month. Jeff Keel, CTV News, Victoria Beach.
So zebra mussels are certainly an eyesore, and I think the video speaks for itself. This is a pile of them in a person's hand. This is a zebra mussel. It is quite small. It is an aquatic invasive species. Zebra mussels came to the Great Lakes in the ballast water of ships. The first zebra mussel sighting in the United States was in 1988 in Lake St. Clair. This lake connects Lake Huron to Lake Erie. In 1990, zebra mussels could be found in all of the Great Lakes. In 2013, they were found in the harbors of the South Basin of Lake Winnipeg. In 2015, zebra mussel veligers, these are the babies, were found in the Manitoba portion of the Red River and in Cedar Lake by Grand Rapids, Manitoba. Veligers start to develop a shell and attach to any firm surface in 2 to 3 weeks. A female zebra mussel can produce 1 million eggs in a season, and the fertilized eggs are called veligers. The next few slides basically show what they're like and how they're spread. The juveniles and adults, they develop these bisessile threads, and they're able to attach to any firm, like they can really attach tightly to any hard surface. And hard surfaces include other aquatic life, plants. Bottom right, you can see a native clam that has been killed by zebra mussels. As you can see, if you put a shopping cart into, well, I'm not sure where this one came from, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was in Gimli Harbor, and you left it there for most of the season, that's what you would get when you pulled it out. They attach to things like plastics, your irrigation systems, or pretty much anything that has that's solid. So the veligers, or the larvae, are microscopic. You can't see them. They float freely and they're moved with water currents, so they're going to go downstream. Eventually they will develop a shell and they can attach themselves to a solid object. Well, you can't see them, so you could easily transport them from invaded waters to uninvaded waters, and that's really the biggest concern we have about these things. We seldom see a zebra mussel attached to a boat. Your boat has to stay in the water for about 12 hours before that happens. So how can we spread zebra mussels? Well, all of these things that you are going to see in the next few slides could either take an attached zebra mussel or a zebra mussel veliger, like the baby, in water, and they can be moved from one water body to another. Your toys, there's another type of thing. Your bait bucket, if you've got water in it, if that water came from an invaded lake and you emptied it somewhere else, it could be a problem. Things like a quad that's driven through the water, or your decoys, or your fishing boat, or your duck hunting boat, these are all things that can move water. And if there's a zebra mussel attached to something, it can be moved as well. Construction equipment. So for recreational users, zebra mussels can, if they attach to your boat, they can increase the drag. Even if you don't see them, they could be inside your motor in the cooling system. They love that. It could cause an expensive repair for you. This is a map of the province of Manitoba's Watercraft inspection program. It shows where their 6 stations are located. This has been true in 2018, 2019, and 2020. We're not sure what they're going to do in 2021. So basically, they strategically position so that they can intercept boats that are leaving invaded waters before they get to uninvaded waters, and essentially, hopefully, treat them. The decontamination stations operate using hot water at 60 degrees Celsius, and they essentially have a low pressure wand that they heat your hull up with, and that's what kills them. There'll be water inside your engine, so they'll attach muffs, or they'll use something like a fake-a-lake device to start water flowing through your engine, and you will have to turn your engine on, run your engine for a little while. And when the water that is coming out of your telltale reaches 60 degrees, they hold that for 60 seconds, I think, and then they're done. So we've concluded we're not all that well protected by the measures the province has put in place. There are many gaps. Specifically, they don't cover all of the roads, and some people travel to our areas using Highway 2 or 3. They are not open all the time, and often people will pass by a watercraft inspection station even if it is open. So really, the province cannot fully protect us. We have to implement additional protective measures in order to reduce our chances of being invaded. Well, how did Riding Mountain Biosphere Reserve proceed? Next slide. In 2017, I think Jim created the Aquatic Invasive Species Stakeholders Communications Network. This is a mailing list that has Manitoba Sustainable Development on it. It has municipalities, conservation districts, First Nations, local provincial NGOs, including chambers of commerce, wildlife federations, cottage organizations. It also includes Riding Mountain National Park, their AIS personnel, and some of our MLAs. We also hosted AIS public awareness town hall meetings in Rossburn and Sandy Lake. Presentations from sustainable development were given. These were well attended by municipal councillors, MLAs, and local residents. I attended the one at Sandy Lake, and that's where I learned that we were actually quite vulnerable to an AIS invasion, even with the protective measures implemented by the province. In 2018, we developed a lot of public awareness material. These included, well, actually, the Zebra Mussel PowerPoint presentation was developed the following year. It's in the wrong place. So we developed the talk, handout, and the poster. We also developed a community engagement AIS planning guide, and we also did a Can I Launch Here sign that can be posted underneath the province's sign. In 2019, we developed the PowerPoint presentation, and some of the slides in this presentation come from that. The Zebra Mussel awareness PowerPoint presentation was delivered at our water stewardship workshops. In 2018, all of the awareness material we developed were reviewed for accuracy by Sustainable Development, and they also did the reviews on all of our materials so far. We held Stop AIS stakeholder seminars in Roblin and Sandy Lake. In 2009, we developed the Zebra Mussel awareness PowerPoint presentation, and we also developed the 2019 Manitoba AIS fines document. We held water stewardship days in Russell and Dauphin. Essentially, all of the materials that we've developed are available online. And this site, friendsofsandylake.com, in the documents section is where you can find them. That's what the site looks like. The talk document is, if you have to scroll down, but you can find the talk document, the talk poster, the community engagement document. This is more or less a list of things that you can do, and it sort of goes through everything from putting signs up and talking to people all the way to locking your lake down completely. These are all things that are possible. We didn't do all of them at our lake, at Sandy Lake, but there are a lot of measures that you can actually take. The Can I Launch Here sign is a prescriptive sign that tells you essentially if you can launch here. And this sign, we put it underneath the provincial sign, which basically tells you that it's against the law to do a whole bunch of things. This actually tells you if, you know, in pretty plain language, if you are able to launch here, or if you should seek additional help to find out. This is the fines document. I believe the province now has a document similar to this, but this is intended for people who are boaters that are moving their boats from one lake to another. And it shows all of the different fixed fines that you can encounter. And of course, if you disregard these things, these fines are cumulative. If you are caught with 2 or 3 of these infractions, it adds up pretty quick. Now let's talk about how you can build public awareness. So the first thing that we would recommend is to get your group together or form a group to create awareness in your area. Use existing material and other resources. Enlist your local government and other organizations that are willing to help. Form a plan and act on it. And that's it.
How do we know if there are mussels in our lake?
Okay, that's a good question. It's kind of hard to tell if you have zebra mussels, but the province and actually Riding Mountain National Park do a lot of testing. They test our lake and most of the lakes that have boating traffic on them in our area. The province tests lots of them as well. We aren't supposed to test anything. It's part of the Manitoba legislation. The Water Protection Act indicates that we should not try to figure out if we've got zebra mussels. They do two types of tests. One test is a sieve that they are looking for veligers with, and they use that sieve to find veligers. That's one of the things. They take the water from these things and they do DNA testing on it. They also have plastic, I've forgotten exactly what they're called, but they put them in locations where they suspect you might have an invasion if they did enter your lake. And if they colonize or if they end up on one of these platters, they will test them to make sure there's zebra mussels.
What do these little critters feed on, Daryl?
They're filter feeders, and they filter about 1 liter of water every day, each one of them, the adults. And they're feeding on phytoplankton, I believe. Jim could verify that, but I believe that's what they feed on. And that's the basis for the food chain that our fish use. So if they ever got into your lake, they could reduce your fish populations, and they probably would reduce the number of fish because they just wouldn't have enough to eat.
What role does the provincial government currently play in the AIS issue?
The provincial government has a point. Well, first of all, they have something called the Water Protection Act, or W65. If you search for it, you can find that document, and it has a section in it on aquatic invasive species, and that's where they have written all the rules that have become law. The province appoints an AIS director. That happens to be Jeff Long. He works for, I'm not sure what the department is now, but it used to be Sustainable Development. Their role is to protect us from aquatic invasive species, and they do a lot of things, actually. Jeff has, I think, 4 full-time staff to do the entire province, and they hire summer students or summer help to run the inspection stations and decontaminations. Very understaffed. I think their budget's been cut every year since since we started working with them, and that was in 2017. So they're responsible for enforcing the Water Protection Act when it comes to aquatic invasive species.
Would a day in the life of an inspector at one of these inspection stations look like, and what would they actually be doing?
Well, the Headingley inspection station, hours are posted on the website that Sustainable Development runs. They would, first of all, use a 3/4 ton truck attach a trailer that is carrying the decontamination unit and other equipment they need to, essentially they would drag that trailer over to Headingley, as an example, and they would set it up, and they would set their signage up on either side of the way station that's at Headingley. They would then start taking people who are coming off the highway in both directions, and they would ask them a lot of questions just to see if they had been in invaded waters. That would be the first thing they're trying to determine. And if they had, how long ago was it? And which area were they in, and they would determine if they needed to be decontaminated, and if they did, they would do the decontamination on the spot. Now, it takes about 15 or 20 minutes to do a small watercraft, and a larger one would take much longer. That would be their life all summer.
That's the questions that we have, Daryl. That's great. Thank you, everyone who submitted questions. And thank you, Daryl, for your response. We'll move on to the second part of the workshop.
This is the story of what we did at Sandy Lake to protect our lake. So the first thing that, actually this was not me, this was a couple of people that attended Jim's, the workshop that was given in 2017. Some of our members attended a workshop in Rossburn. And out of that workshop, it was pretty evident that we needed to do something to protect our lakes. And so our municipality put a resolution together. I don't know that you can read the resolution, but this is Resolution 143, and it reads, "Be it resolved, the municipality of Harrison Park support all interested parties in the municipality in preventing the spread of zebra mussels into the municipality through education, signage, and voluntary inspections." So that happened fairly early in the game. So we did a few things, and essentially after we did those things, we decided that on Halloween of 2017, we should go to the municipality and make a presentation to them regarding watercraft inspections, which was sort of the first thing we wanted to talk to them about. And they made a resolution that essentially reads, "Be it resolved that administration be instructed to develop a special services area plan for aquatic invasive species, specifically for the properties in and around Sandy Lake." So that resolution had more to do with how we were going to pay for inspectors. The next meeting we had with them was to do with decontamination station. And then after that, they had decided for whatever reason that they weren't going to support us anymore. So the resolution reads, "Be it resolved that the special services area plan for aquatic invasive species, specifically for the properties in and around Sandy Lake, be tabled until such time as the province of Manitoba commits to an effective aquatic invasive species prevention strategy for Western Manitoba." Well, they were really upset with the province downloading things onto the municipality, and so they considered this to be one of those things, and they weren't going to take it anymore. So we were sort of shut out. We actually had a lot of meetings with the municipality, and pleading with them didn't seem to move them at all. We did have that earlier resolution where we could do a few things. So in the spring of 2018 with the municipality, they did support us in a lot of things. We essentially updated the provincial AIS signage, and we put our sign that was "Can I Launch Here" sign underneath theirs. And we did that to all the lakes in the municipality. The municipality printed the talk document and the posters and put them in stores and wherever we could distribute them. We held AIS inspection training at the Sandy Lake Fire Hall. They provided the location, and it worked out really well. So that took us into about May. So in the spring, we started doing things ourselves about May, We enlisted a number of people to help us conduct a public awareness campaign. And this was done at a time when the cottagers were going to be back. We started a petition and went door to door. We got over 300 signatures and lots of support. Once people understood what was going on, they wanted to help, and they couldn't believe that the municipality wasn't going to do anything. So we attended their meeting on the 26th of June, and we presented the petition to the council, and we packed their meeting room essentially. And after that meeting, it was pretty much smooth sailing. They agreed to meet with us and discuss a number of things. And one of the things that we had to do, we started this in the summer, is to create a not-for-profit entity in order to apply for grants. I mean, we were just volunteers at that time. We didn't have any employees. We couldn't hire anyone. We couldn't accept money, from agencies that would grant things. Anyways, we essentially inspected boats at the main dock, and we incorporated a company called Sandy Lake Water Protection Working Group. This was Jim's name. He likes long names. This is descriptive as to what we do, though. So in the summer, we constructed an off-grid watercraft inspection office, and it's located right next to the main dock. People who are launching their boats have to launch. They back in right beside our building. We also installed lockable gates at 3 public locations where trailered watercraft could be launched. That meant that they had to go to the main street dock and be inspected. So in the summer of 2018, we inspected watercraft at the Main Street boat launch with volunteers. There were 4 high-risk watercraft that were sent to be decontaminated by Riding Mountain National Park. We had made an arrangement with them. They have been a great partner. Can't say enough about them. In the summer of 2019 and 2020, we were funded by Canada Summer Jobs and the Green Team Manitoba provincial funding. And we hired 3 watercraft inspectors. 2 of them had been trained by Riding Mountain National Park. And all of our inspectors went through the watercraft inspection training that was delivered in 2018. We did watercraft inspection training again in 2019. And in 2019, we inspected 1,350 boats roughly. And of those, 5 were high risk, and we sent them to Riding Mountain National Park. 2 of them didn't make it there. We're very disappointed that happened. The next year, this past summer in 2020, we inspected even more boats. With COVID, I think a lot more people came to the lake. There were 7 watercraft that were high risk, and every one of them went to be decontaminated. There was one particular incident where an individual got a little bit out of hand, but it was averted, and that individual did take his boat to be decontaminated. That's basically it.
Thank you, Daryl. We do have some questions. What dollars does the RM typically put into the program here in the Sandy Lake area on a normal year?
Last year, they gave us $6,500 in funding. We asked for 9, and no, I think they gave us $6,000 in funding. We asked for 9, and they at the end of the year we were over budget a little bit because we went into September with our watercraft inspections. So this past year they gave us $6,500, and in 2020 with COVID we actually used a little bit less money because we had no overlap whatsoever when we had inspectors at that building, and we still maintained about the same coverage, and we went into the end of September. So we started in, I think it was the May long weekend we started. And we're typically running the inspection station starting, I think it was in, towards the end of June, we were running 12 hours a day.
What happened after after mussel DNA was discovered in Whirlpool Lake?
Whirlpool Lake, there were two incidents. One was in Shingoose Lake, and the province looked after that. In Whirlpool Lake, it was Riding Mountain National Park. That's where Whirlpool Lake is located, and they're like their own country. So they handle everything inside the park. What seemed to happen is someone brought possibly a dead zebra mussel, or maybe a zebra mussel that was alive but died. And the fact that they found eDNA, that's basically there's DNA that belongs to a zebra mussel found in Whirlpool Lake. So when they found that, they didn't just test once. They tested more than once. And I believe once they found it twice, and they closed the lake. That particular lake, you can only bring kayaks and canoes. There are no trailered or motorized watercraft allowed on that lake. So they just closed it. There was a gate. They stopped everyone from using that lake, and they closed it on December the 12th, which was the day that the council told us they weren't going to help us anymore in 2017. And that lake was closed for 2 years. It just recently opened this summer. They drew the lake down a little bit because the zebra mussels are likely around the edge of the shoreline. And so the idea there was that if they drew the water down, it would freeze that area and that would kill them. They can survive in water. That's not a problem for them. But if it's frozen water, that is. In fact, if you have your boat stored outside over winter, or your boat is in minus 10 degrees Celsius weather for, I think it's 10 days or something like that, it's been decontaminated by nature.
Do you see any difference between Sandy Lake situation, which has no rivers or streams feeding it, compared to, say, a Minnedosa Lake, which is river fed?
Well, zebra mussels, they're veligers, the small invisible ones, go with the current. So if someone upstream of you had an invasion, then you are eventually going to be invaded. There's no question about that. It's just a question of whether, you know, what the bottom is like in your lake or in your stream. And if you've got, you know, rocks, they're likely going to colonize. If they don't, they'll colonize further downstream. But once these things get into your watershed, and that, I think that's why Riding Mountain National Park takes it extremely seriously. They're at the headwaters, and they're a national park, and they sure as heck don't want to have zebra mussels and all that bad publicity that comes with it. It's pretty, well, I would say it's pretty devastating for Lake Winnipeg, and it would be a disaster for this area and around Riding Mountain National Park. It would invade just about everything.
Did Sandy Lake happen to track the high usage times, or have an impression of what those times were as far as boat launching?
It varied a lot because, you know, in nice weather there'd be a lot more activity, but typically around the weekends it was much more active than during the week, and even in the summer. We didn't really track that, you know, in that way. We do have records of every inspection that we have done, the time and the date that they were done, and I suppose we could analyze that. But for the most part, we require one person to be there and wait for the next boat. So we aren't really concerned about that. But we have had lineups down the street of people wanting to launch their boats.
Would the Sandy Lake group be okay sharing the costs of the boat launch gates and the signage as you approach Sandy Lake?
We never asked the municipality to support us for the gates and for the building. We did ask for donations of a couple of different places, and essentially most of the material we paid for out of our own, we did some fundraising. Friends of Sandy Lake gave us a considerable amount of money towards the project, and we were able to get some extremely good purchases or donations from different players, like the co-op, for example. They gave us something. We got better pricing on the materials that we needed. Some of the individuals that were helping were involved in the construction business, and they had some pull to get products that we needed from different vendors. Basically, I can't remember the exact amount, but the total cost of the building, when you include everything, has got to be in around $15,000 to $20,000, and that's basically the materials. This is not a cheap building. The electronics and the solar panels cost a fair bit. The pictures I showed showed it with 6 or 3 solar panels. We had to double that, and we have cameras that are very high quality cameras that capture everything going into the lake from that location, and we can read the license plates very clearly, the boat number, the trailer license plate. They're all visible to the cameras, and we track things that way. We can look to see what happened after hours. Often it's wildlife, see a fox or something like that, geese.
You may have addressed this question earlier to some degree, but how much funding from government actually goes directly towards the labor or wage component of the inspection?
Well, in our case at Sandy Lake, the government of Manitoba and the government of Canada, if we take their money, they will pay minimum wage. And we pay more than that because we need to get good people. And we've been fortunate the last couple of years. In 2019, the minimum wage was $11.35, I think, and we paid $13.50. In 2020, the minimum wage was $11.65, and we paid $13.75. So the municipality, the money we get from the municipality helps us a lot. First of all, these government programs don't pay the entire lump sum up front, and as a nonprofit, we're sort of on the hook to pay these summer workers. What the municipality gives us, we use that to boost the wage and to get us through to the end of the year. We have gotten advances from the Manitoba government, and typically they give you 2/3 of the grant that they have allowed you to have. But when you get to the end of the year, you need the extra money from the municipality to pay the additional money that you're topping their wages up with, and you also need to pay CRA. They demand the tax money you're withholding plus the employer's portion of the CPP and EI, and you've got a few other expenses in there as well. So that right now we still haven't received our 2020 check from the provincial government, which is roughly about $3,000. I think we spend a total on wages in around the $22,000 to $25,000 a year. So it's substantial. And our experience is that we really can't do this with volunteers. We really need people to be at that station during the day, 7 days a week.
Next question is preluded by an interesting comment, or some interesting comments, Daryl. One of the participants tonight is saying that, we invited over 100 cottagers to view tonight this workshop, and only 3 of us are here. People have been interested when we talk to them, but not convinced about our volunteer base if we need to have volunteers do inspections at our boat launch. What was the most effective method of increasing awareness in the Sandy Lake case?
Well, the most effective, I guess, to comment on the number of people that were invited to the meeting and the number of people that actually showed up, it is disappointing. And just to go back, I didn't really dwell on the fighting that we did with the municipality, but it was a long and very frustrating fight that we had with council. I mean, they were doing what they thought was the best, and of course we didn't agree with them, but it was just infuriating that we couldn't make headway with them. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of effort to get this stuff to move forward. We spent from, I guess it was October 31st until June 26th doing that. I mean, we had support, but we didn't have it until the cottage owners came back and we talked with them. We shopped that document, that handout. It's a 2-page handout. And I went door to door on my street, and there's about 30, I knocked on 30 doors or so. This was in 2018 in the spring. And in every case, without exception, I introduced myself and I handed them this sheet. It's a single piece of paper printed on both sides in color, which the municipality printed, and they've printed lots of these things for us. They likely wouldn't have read the document if I hadn't introduced myself. And then the first question they asked me was on the first paragraph of that document, and I read it to them. The second question was on the second paragraph, and I read that to them. And then we went through basically the whole document, and at the end of it, they were very supportive. They signed the petition, and I went to the next house. Unfortunately, that takes quite a bit of time. It was 15 to 20 minutes at each household. And you need quite a few volunteers that are up to speed that will do that for you. That was the most effective thing that we did to gain public awareness.
Another question, and I hope I get this one right, but it has to do with the villagers and the decontamination or inspection of boats. Are they actually inspecting, testing for the presence of villagers?
You can't really test for villagers. Villagers are not going to attach to the Watercraft because they haven't developed their bisexual threads to attach. They only develop them once they're a juvenile and form their shell. And they're very tiny, like they're the size of a grain of sand, literally. They're tiny. So yes, you can rub your hand across the hull of a boat, and if it feels like sandpaper, there is a chance that that's not a villager, but a zebra mussel that is a juvenile. They will eventually grow to about the size of your thumbnail. But we don't test for villagers. Villagers we're quite concerned about, and really what we're looking for is water. We look to see if there's water in that boat. And there could be water in the engine. First thing we do when we're inspecting a boat is we ask if, where they've been and how long ago had they launched this watercraft. If the answer is it's never been in the water this year, it was stored outdoors, and it froze, then we say, okay, you're good to go. If the answer is, well, It's been about a month and a half. We haven't launched it in a month and a half. Well, then we're okay with that. If it was within a month, we're not okay with that. If they've come from a lake that has zebra mussels in it, that boat could still have live zebra mussels even if it's been dry out. A zebra mussel can survive 30 days out of the water, but the veligers can't. They need water. And if you find water in, well, if a boat has ballast tanks, or if it has a live well, or if you can see that they've left the plug in and there's water in the bottom of the boat, like you have to get them to take the plug out. They're supposed to travel with the plug out. That's the law, and you can get a fine for that. So really, we're not expecting to see a zebra mussel attached to a boat. It could be that there's water inside of the boat. It could be there's water inside of the engine. And if there's water inside of the engine and you came from an invaded lake, you need to be decontaminated. In fact, if you came from a contaminated lake, or a lake that was invaded with zebra mussels, before you launch into another body of water, it's the law that you must have your boat decontaminated, period. And so that's what we're looking for. It's mostly asking questions. In our case, I would say 95% of the inspections we do are inspecting people who are returning here. And we know them. And we ask them questions, and they're quite good about it. Could they lie to us? Of course they could. We don't think they are. We sort of look at their boat too, so we don't just rely on their answers.
Is the province testing all lakes in Western Manitoba for mussels?
I don't believe it is. They do have a list of lakes that they test. I'm not sure if it's posted, but certainly we have seen their lists, and they will make them available, I believe, if we ask them to. We work quite closely with Jeff Long and Candace Parks. There are 2 or 3 other people now that are different, but we know them all.
What in your opinion, Daryl, would make or have the biggest impact on advancing initiatives to mitigate against AIS?
Well, the very first thing you really have to do, and we covered that in the previous presentation, is you have to build public awareness. Without that, you're going nowhere fast. To do that is difficult if you haven't got a person's attention, and I don't know how you can do that without enlisting a lot of volunteers to actually talk to people. That's probably the most important thing. The province doesn't really spend as much as they ought to, in my opinion, on aquatic invasive species protection. They also don't spend, in my opinion, they don't spend enough money on locations where a lake or water body is invaded, to tell people that this water body is part of a control zone and it has this kind of aquatic invasive species in it. Now, they may have changed that. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I have friends that live at different lakes, and on Lake Winnipeg, I don't think they have put signage at all of the boat launches to let people know that they must have their boat decontaminated if they take it away from this body of water. So that's another thing. Most of the people in Winnipeg don't realize there's an issue. At least that's my opinion. Lots do, but there are some that don't. That was one of the problems we had with the boat coming into our lake from Nettly Creek. The individual had probably a $40,000 boat on a tandem trailer that had 6 ballast tanks, and he had no clue. He came in at the last minute, just as our watercraft inspector was pulling away from the building, and she turned around and went back and inspected the boat. That was the guy that was upset when we told him he couldn't launch. But yeah, I mean, you can't make people read the signs. I mean, the signs are at all of our lakes, and they're available if anyone wants those signs. They can take the artwork, and their municipality can have a sign essentially produced by a standard sign maker that they use for all of their signs. It'll cost them about $50 per sign. Of course, you need a post to put it on. So it's a little more, and then you need someone to put the post in the ground, and then the province will give you the sign that they have that tells you what the law is. But telling you what the law is doesn't really help a person that has traveled some distance and wants to launch their boat to go fishing. You need more. And well, enough said on that.
Do you see any opportunity for a collection of lake organizations and communities to join together to have an impact on this?
Yes, that's probably the only way that we will be able to get the government of Manitoba's attention on this topic. And we have been working on that sort of thing. Jim, myself, and a fellow up north, his name is Christopher Smith. He lives at Cranberry Portage, and we're all interested in trying to get the government of Manitoba to listen to some of the stakeholders, not just pass it off to the AIS director, Jeff Long. Jeff is basically an employee of the government, and the government decides, well, the government tells Jeff what he needs to do, and he does his best with what they give him. But there are a lot of other things that could be done, and the province can't do a lot of them. I mean, the province couldn't close the boat launches that could be used to launch a trailered watercraft. That was a municipal thing. The province isn't going to be able to tell us that it's okay for us to put our building next to the boat launch. There's a number of little things like that that the municipalities can do for us, but the province can't. A lot of other things that are important, we have great advertising for fishing, like Travel Manitoba does a wonderful job. They're a Crown corporation, and they aren't really saying much about what protective measures an individual coming to our lakes ought to do. Like they should go to a watercraft inspection station, as an example, and have their boat inspected. But they don't mention that, or at least they haven't until just lately. In the fishing, the Angler's Handbook in Manitoba, it's only recently that they have put things into that book related to aquatic invasive species. There's a lot of stuff going on where you've got silos of information. Travel Manitoba has lots of money, and the sustainable development guys don't. And so when asked if, sustainable development would love to have advertising going into the Travel Manitoba website, for example, videos. I mean, you could do that, but they're not.
At Sandy Lake, do you give keys to local citizens for the gated, locked approaches to the lake, boat launches?
No, we have combination locks on those, and we do change the combinations, but we do give the combination to one or two individuals that live close by that particular gate, and those individuals, their phone numbers are placed on the gate itself. So although cell coverage isn't very good, they can usually get someone. and get the gate opened if it is something that really needs to be done. The gates are closed once the water temperature reaches a point where zebra mussels are breeding. And prior to that, people use those, the open gates allow people to go ice fishing and so on, but they also allow a person to put their dock in if they take it out and park it near the gate. Most people don't do that. They just bring it up onto their lawns. If you want to take your boat out of the water, you really should be driving the boat or driving your trailer over to the Main Street dock and taking it out there. We do post a person at one of the locations where we know quite a few people have their trailers, and we keep the gate open for a couple of days that way.
Can you speak to what's happening at Shingoose Lake, Daryl?
I don't know if they've opened it yet, but they haven't found any more evidence of zebra mussels, so it may very well be that it's open now. But initially what happened is there was a suspect zebra mussel, and they actually gave the residents, I think they gave them two options. This is sustainable development. One option was lock the lake down, phone the police if anyone is on the lake. Well, they took the second option, which was you can put your boat on the lake if you live at the lake or if you have a cottage there, but you can't take it out. And if you take it out, you need a permit.
And what are your thoughts on the sticker program the Riding Mountain National Park uses? Do you see that as helping prevention of AIS at a lake that perhaps couldn't access paid staff or inspectors, yet has a high boat traffic?
Well, Riding Mountain National Park has a really good program. What they do, for those who don't know, is they have a course that you can take, and if you pass the course, then they will give you it's a voucher, I think, and you take that voucher with your watercraft to a watercraft inspection station. That would be at the boat cove at Clear Lake, and they will put a sticker on your boat indicating, they'll inspect your boat, and if necessary, they'll decontaminate it. And at the end of it all, you will get a sticker that will go on your boat, and that will indicate that the boat has been inspected and that you, as the boat owner, have agreed not to take your boat outside the park and launch it. If you do, you have to sort of let them know, and they will do the inspection again. But it avoids a lineup. It helps them a lot. And so it's a good carrot for an individual that has a boat that regularly wants to launch in Clear Lake. They don't have to get inspected every time. But it's more or less an honors thing. You have to agree and abide by this agreement that you will not launch outside of the Riding Mountain National Park. Do I see it as something that we would find useful to protect our lakes? I'm not really sure. I don't think the province has anything that they can offer a person that would get them to take a course on zebra mussels and how they need to behave if they're moving their boat from one place to another. They have the law, and quite frankly, they don't enforce it very often, but they have. Certainly the park has basically stopped being nice to people who essentially contravene their law, and they give them a healthy ticket to the point where, if necessary, they'll take their boat away.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you everyone for the excellent questions. That was really awesome and much appreciated.
Well, thank you very much, Daryl. That was excellent. And Dennis, thank you for your assistance. Our next workshop is on December the 30th, 7 p.m., same place, same station. And David Cairns will be telling us the story of Gull Lake's AIS protection measures. And Daryl will talk some more about Watercraft AIS inspection and decontamination logistics. The invitations to the next workshop will be sent out to those on our mailing list and also be posted on our Manitoba Healthy Prairie Lakes Network Facebook page. And the recording of this workshop will also be on YouTube, and the links will be on the Facebook page. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this happy holiday season. And thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.